All right, so big developments taking place here at the SCO summit. I'm reporting live from Tianjin. The SCO leaders meet is over, and after that now everybody of course looking forward to that bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has shared a picture and image inside a car with the president of Russia, in which the Prime Minister said after the SCO summit, now they are heading towards the next venue where the bilateral talks would be held between both the leaders. What are going to be the issues that will be discussed? Well, we pretty much have an idea. The president of Russia, Mr. Vladimir Putin, did say during his plenary address that during the bilaterals and the engagements that he's going to have with leaders, he is going to tell them about the conversation he had with Donald Trump in Alaska. We have our guests Sushant Sareen and Madhav Nalapat on the broadcast at the moment. Let me quickly go across to Madhav Nalapat. Two big developments. One, of course, we're looking at this image of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin heading towards their venue where the bilateral talk is supposed to take place. Now, like we've been discussing, US is definitely monitoring all the developments that are taking place in this Eurasian summit very, very closely. This is one image that will somewhere get Donald Trump a little worried. I don't know if he'll be riled or not, but a little worried, because he wanted these two nations, he wanted to drive them away. He wanted India to stop buying oil from Russia. But just look at this image. It looks like both nations only getting more closer.
Well, Trump is a person who looks at newspaper headlines and who looks at television. And I can tell you, those who said, oh, this is hardly giving no attention is being given by Western media to the SCO summit. Well, I can tell you that the photograph of Modi, Xi and Putin have got a lot of attention in Western media. The reality is that Putin and Russia have always been very good friends of India. So this is going to be a very warm and cordial meeting. And I'm very certain that, as you correctly mentioned, issues like the S-400, issues like delayed deliveries, maintenance issues will all be worked out. And the Russians, had been very generous in the past in having technology sharing arrangements with India, and I hope they come back to that kind of regime in the future as well. For some time they were prevented from doing so by a good friend of theirs to the south of Russia, but now I hope that those blocks will be cleared, and once again we're going to have a seamless sort of technology cooperation, the kind of cooperation that ensured the success of the BrahMos missile project. Thank you.
Right. I want to quickly also bring in Mr. Sushant Sareen. I'm being told that we're joined by Terrell Jones as well, international relations specialist. Let me quickly first go across to Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, after all that conversation about geopolitical shake-up, the handshakes, the warm meeting between India, Russia and China, the focus is back now only on India and Russia. And when you only talk about India and Russia and the issues that are going to be discussed, one of them is also trade deficit. Do you think that is going to come up, or will other issues like tariff and Ukraine perhaps overshadow that?
I think, look, when the two principals will meet, I don't think we can prejudge what they're going to discuss. But I suppose some trade issues will definitely come up. Defense issues will definitely come up. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Ukrainian issue and the entire conflict which is taking place in that region is going to be the center point of discussions. Please remember that you had the Ukrainian president call up Prime Minister Modi just on the eve of his visit to China. And clearly, if Mr. Modi can use his offices to effect some kind of, rapprochement, I think rapprochement is too strong a word, but some kind of, he can use his offices to bring them closer together, to lead to some kind of a solution to this crisis. Why not? Provided both sides want him to do it. But I think he could raise certain issues with President Putin and see if the president is willing to, respond to some of those issues which he brings up and take it from there. again, let's not get ahead of ourselves and think that we have some kind of a magic bullet to resolve this crisis between Russia and Ukraine. But to whatever extent we can play a role, I don't see any reason why we should not play a role, provided both sides want it. And I think, at least with the Russians, we have enough bona fides that we can have a conversation with them and even, try and figure out where they want to take this. So I would imagine that would be one of the central points of discussion. But of course, a lot of other things will be discussed, including the kind of pressure that is being put on India simply because we are engaged with the Russians, simply because we do not want to break off our relationship with Russia, which is a very important and critical relationship for us because, in a manner of speaking, Russia is a neighboring country. Given the kind of footprint Russia has in the region, you can say that it might not be an immediate neighbor, but it is a neighbor of sorts. And we have to live in this region and we have to deal with countries in this region. And Russia plays a very important role. We've seen what the Russians are doing or trying to do in Afghanistan, where we might be having a convergence of interests with the Russians more than we have with the Americans. So I think there are a lot of areas in which we can engage with the Russians. The Americans need to understand it, just as we understand American compulsions when they deal with countries which are neither friendly to India or in some cases avowed enemies. Pakistan is a prime example. We don't throw a hissy fit and say that if you're going to be dealing with the Pakistanis, we are not going to be talking to you, we are going to impose sanctions on you, all kinds of other nonsensical things which are coming towards us from the Trump administration. Have we told the Americans that if you go to Pakistan to explore for oil or critical minerals, we will impose 500% tariffs on you? This is not the way you conduct international relations. I don't know what's gone wrong with DC. It was supposed to be, the center of gravity of international diplomacy and international politics. I don't think this is the way to make America great again. America has always been a great country, but I think what is being done is undermining the greatness of America and reducing it to a bunch of memes, lampooning, mocking of the United States system. I think for somebody like me who has always been very keen on India having extremely good relations and excellent relations with the Americans, I find it rather unfortunate the trajectory of events where the Trump characters have taken it, especially madcaps like Navarro and others who open their mouth without thinking of what they are saying. They use the most obnoxious and hateful language, and which is not acceptable to any country. Maybe that's the kind of street language in the United States, and it's par for the course out there. But that's not the language of diplomacy. That's not the language you use when you are talking to other people.
Well, the president, when the president himself is not practicing any restraint, you will have such bizarre logics and statements coming to fore. Let me also bring in Terrell Jones. Terrell Jones, do you see a geopolitical shakeup happening triggered by the SCO and the bilaterals and the meetings that are taking place, or do you believe that will take time, but perhaps we should at the moment only focus on how the SCO is getting stronger?
Good morning. I appreciate the chance to join you today. I think things are moving extremely fast, astonishingly fast. It's not a question of time will tell. Things are moving at a very fast clip and often in unexpected ways. You are just showing the picture right now of Prime Minister Modi with President Putin in the limousine, which evokes the events of just a few days ago when Vladimir Putin joined Donald Trump in a limousine at their sort of mini summit in Alaska. But I think the bilateral meetings, especially between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi and between Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi, are extremely significant and are showing a very rapid and almost sea change shifts in policy and regional alliances. the meeting tomorrow with between Prime Minister Modi and Vladimir Putin is almost at the center of the sort of crisis between New Delhi and Washington. The most recent conflict being, of course, the tariffs, 50% tariffs imposed by Washington on India because of purchases of energy from Russia. And so now if you have Prime Minister Modi and Vladimir Putin talking under the shadow of these rather aggressive tariffs from the United States, it's only going to push the two together in a way that other policies, tariffs included, have kind of pushed India into China's orbit more.
Absolutely, and these are not optics. The images that you see actually speak volumes about the kind of relationship that Russia and India have had for very many years, for a really long time. I am being told that we are also joined by Veena Sikri. Let me quickly go across to her. Veena Sikri, another big development that took place was the joint declaration in which the member nations of SCO condemned the Pahalgam terror attack, the attack that Prime Minister mentioned during his address in the plenary session, and the members have given their commitment that the perpetrators, organizers and the sponsors of this should be brought to justice. Now, the Prime Minister mentioned the Pahalgam terror attack, and then you see it reflecting in the joint draft. How significant do you think that is? India leading this fight against terrorism and the SCO members, the member nations joining that fight, giving that commitment to India that yes, this is a common threat.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a remarkably well-drafted declaration. And as far as India's concerns on terrorism are concerned, they have been fully reflected. I mean, we could not hope for a better reflection of India's concerns on terrorism. The mention of Pahalgam, the mention of the perpetrators, bringing them to justice, and all the member states, which includes, of course, Pakistan, taking full action to bring these people to justice. And to say that this is, something, a declaration that has been adopted with Pakistan as a participant is really remarkable, because they've accepted full responsibility for this. Of course, there is also a mention of the Jafar, the attack on the train, etc. But that's all right. I think on our issues on Pahalgam, we got full bang for the buck on that. I would like to say just one point, that in the SCO there is a regional anti-terrorism structure. It's called RATS, R-A-T-S, and it is headquartered in Tashkent, in Uzbekistan. So now it is up to India to make sure that through RATS the implementation takes place. I'm saying this very clearly and strongly, because in SARC, actually, the counter-terrorism fight floundered on implementation. There is a counter-terrorism desk, which is actually based in Sri Lanka, which is supposed to coordinate information, etc. The RATS also has a big implementation structure. It has a big, list of responsibilities on what they are going to do in Tashkent. But again, the implementation becomes the key. So just as in the counterterrorism desk in SARC in Sri Lanka, because of absolutely no information being given, no response by the member countries concerned with terrorist attacks, it floundered. It is floundering. So now we have to make sure that in SCO, it's a very good initiative, because in SCO, counterterrorism, countering extremism and separatism is one of the three pillars. This is the an important reason why they were founded, and it's been a very, very important pillar. It is an important pillar of their raison d'etre, as it were. And together with connectivity and together with people-to-people cooperation and reform, this is what our Prime Minister spoke about in his speech. These three pillars of the SCO. So I think we should immediately get down to doing. I know there would be an interest from Tashkent. I think Uzbekistan will be an interested country. We have very good relationships with Uzbekistan. Our Prime Minister has had a discussion with the President of Uzbekistan during this visit in the SCO. So everything is going to now depend on the implementation. And I think that if the SCO remains united on this issue of counterterrorism, exactly as what they have said in the declaration, then you can even take it to the UN. Because, in the UN, if you have a group of countries, an important group of countries like the SCO group supporting it and, carrying it to the UN, then that boost India's own efforts to have a convention on counter-terrorism in the UN. And we've been trying to do that, but of course in the UN it's much more dissipated discussion, and people are even stuck on the definition of terrorism on that. But I do think that all in all, the Tianjin Declaration is a remarkable signal of India's success in the participation and in the outcome of the SCO summit. And this, combined with the bilaterals, including the trilateral pull aside this morning between Russia, India and China, and now the forthcoming bilateral which is now underway between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi, on which we could expect something even on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We could expect something on that. We could expect our Prime Minister's contribution towards pushing the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
That might come up during the discussion, because the President of Russia himself in the address in the plenary session said that he promises the member nations that he's going to bring that issue up. He's going to give them, details about the conversation that was had in Alaska. So that I'm sure will come up during the bilateral. I want to bring in Srinjoy Chaudhary into the debate now. Srinjoy, a very important point made by Veena Sikri, something that we were discussing earlier as well. Yes, this is, a significant moment. India's concerns being reflected in that joint declaration signed by the member nations, giving their commitment to fighting against terrorism. But implementation is an altogether different aspect of it. One has to make sure it does not just remain an initiative.
Yes. Of course, India would have been happier if the words cross-border terrorism had been included, but you can't have everything. Let's not forget that the Chinese are the hosts, the Pakistanis are participants, so you can't get everything you want. But the fact that what was put out is substantial is actually a triumph for India. Yes, she's right. Veena Sikri is right. It's important to have proper enforcement, proper counter-terrorism measures. But the question is, can SCO actually do it? I doubt it very much. At the end of the day, India will have to do what India can do and has done. India's done a surgical strike. India's done a Balakot. India's done a Sindoor. Sindoor is still on. Theoretically, at least, it's still on. And something more can happen. But the point is, at the end of the day, India realizes that India has to fight its own battles. How do you expect any kind of effort by the SCO group against against terrorists in Pakistan or in POK? Do you expect a kind of strike by the SCO? They don't have the ability to do it. The only way that can be done is probably through financial means. And whether that can be done, we don't know. There is already something in place internationally. How effective is that? That also has to be kept in mind. At the end of the day, the most effective counter-terror measures that have been taken were Balakot and more recently Sindoor. Now, keep in mind this. Once upon a time, there were lots and lots of terror attacks. Little ones, big ones, in Delhi, outside Delhi, all over the place. Now, after Balakot, for a long time, there was very little. Now, after Sindoor, you would expect silence from the other side.
Right. Now, I want to take that point across to Professor Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, yes, India is doing everything that it can do by responding to such terror attacks, by, ensuring that we hit back with equal force, we hit where it hurts and lasts the most. So then what is the need to get this sort of a commitment from the member nations of a platform like SCO? Is it to ensure that it does not just remain, for the West and for others, an issue between India and Pakistan, to draw the attention of people that this is terrorism? You need to acknowledge it and you need to join this fight against terrorism.
Well, allow me to say that it is a very significant achievement for a simple reason that it is specifically condemning not just terror as a generic term. That is what you used to do. But the Pahalgam attack and the perpetrators of the attack, the state sponsors of the attack, know very well who was behind that attack. And of course, given the mood of the SCO, they kept quiet. So I think it is definitely a significant victory. I'd like to point out that this summit is important for a simple reason. It shows that under the presidency of Donald Trump, America has become a much weaker force in the world than it was previous to, previous to Trump becoming what he is now over the last 6 or 7 weeks. The U.S. is now unable, for example, Russia and Ukraine. Russia is going to keep pummeling Ukraine. There's no question of peace in Ukraine until Ukraine is settled in a way meets Russia's needs. You saw just a short while ago a pounding of Odessa and really pounding of other centers in Ukraine. Because frankly, Zelensky is not a partner in peace, and he has never been a partner in peace, and the Russians are not going to stop. I think, frankly, Sindoor was absolutely the right thing to do. The only way to challenge this kind of terror is, frankly, through very hard action. And that means building up your self-reliance, building up your missile forces, building up, your technological capability, because today's war is not a war of machines as much as it is a war of technology, of mind power. And that mind power, we have abundance of it in India, and the most important part of this is that the Prime Minister is now loosening the controls that were there previously on this mind power being exercised in India in a way that is there in some other countries. So I'd like to say very clearly, it is a very significant development, but ultimately, I agree with Srinjoy, we have to rely on ourselves. Right. We can't get anybody to pull our chestnuts out of the fire. But I think, given the kind of speed with which we have been growing, given the kind of restrictions that are being lifted on technology, I'm very optimistic that this will be done.
Right. Okay. Before I take a break, I quickly want Sushant Sareen to come in. Your comments.
I don't know what else I can do but agree with both what Srinjoy and what Professor Alapat have said. And look, let's again be realistic. The United Nations Security Council has passed, sanctions against terror groups. They have mandated what are and these are instructions from the UNSC, which are not obligatory. They have to be done, right? The point is that the UNSC has designated terror groups, but let us look at what the enforcement mechanism is. There is none. So you see designated terror groups in Pakistan, for example, enjoy impunity, complete impunity. And I was earlier giving the example of how terror groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba and all are engaged in flood relief activity. When their Falah Insaniyat Foundation and all these other fronts which they have set up should have been dismantled by now. So they are flouting the UNSC sanctions, the regulations which the UNSC has mandated on all countries. And yet people like Donald Trump and others think that Azim Munir is a really strong man and he's a stalwart ally of the United States. This after the same United States was stabbed in the back by the Pakistanis for 20 years. So there are going to be serious problems when you take terrorism into the multilateral forum, simply because different countries have different interests with different terror groups. It's the same Americans who were fighting Islamist terrorists in Syria by supporting other separatist groups in Syria against the Assad regime. And now Donald Trump finds Ahmad Shara of Al-Qaeda fame to be a very nice and smart, handsome young man. Absolutely. And doing business with him just because Ahmad Shara...
The host nation is an all-weather friend of Pakistan and has blocked multiple attempts of getting individuals designated as global terrorists. So we have that example right in front of us where the SCO is happening. A very quick break. Veena Sikri and gentlemen, stay on with us.